Title: The Shadow in the Mirror. My name is Ethan Cole, and what I'm about to share with you is something I've never fully come to terms with. It happened 2 years ago, but the memories linger like shadows clinging to the corners of my mind. This isn't just a story, it's a warning. I was a college student back then, renting a small, rundown apartment near campus. It wasn't much, but it was all I could afford. The place had an eerie charm, with creaky wooden floors, old brass fixtures, and a large antique mirror bolted to the wall in the bedroom. I never thought much about it, until things started to change. It began subtly. I'd catch glimpses of movement in the mirror, shadows flickering where there shouldn't have been any. I blamed it on exhaustion or poor lighting, brushing off the uneasy feeling creeping up my spine. But deep down, something felt wrong. One night, after pulling an all-nighter for an exam, I stumbled into bed around 3 a.m. The apartment was deathly quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. As I drifted into a light sleep, a faint tapping sound woke me. I groggily opened my eyes, realizing the sound was coming from the mirror. I sat up, heart racing. The tapping continued, rhythmic and deliberate. Gathering my courage, I approached the mirror. My reflection stared back, but something was off. My reflection wasn't moving in sync with me. It blinked a second too late, its smile lingering just a little too long when mine had faded. A sudden, unnatural chill filled the room, seeping into my skin like icy fingers trailing down my spine. Goosebumps prickled along my arms, and my breath came out in faint, misty puffs despite the heater humming in the background. My heart pounded so violently, I could feel it echo in my eardrums, a deep, rhythmic thud against the oppressive silence. My legs grew weak, trembling slightly as I instinctively stepped back. But my reflection didn't mirror the motion immediately. Instead, it hesitated for a heartbeat, then slowly followed, its eyes gleaming with something that felt too aware, too alive. And then, it tilted its head slightly, even though I hadn't moved. Chilled to the bone, I covered the mirror with an old sheet, convincing myself it was just stress playing tricks on me. But that didn't stop it. Over the next few weeks, things escalated. Objects in my apartment moved on their own. Books fell from shelves without cause. Lights flickered even though the wiring was fine. Sometimes, I woke up to find the sheet had been pulled off the mirror, folded neatly at the foot of my bed. And always, that mirror felt like it was watching me, even when covered. Strange symbols began to appear on the fogged-up bathroom mirror after my shower symbols I couldn't recognize, etched faintly as if drawn by invisible fingers. The first time I froze, my breath catching in my throat as I stared at the jagged lines that seemed to pulse faintly in the mist. My heart raced, a cold sweat trickling down my back, despite the lingering warmth from the shower. Each time new symbols appeared, they grew more complex, interwoven like some ancient script meant for eyes that understood more than I ever could. I tried to wipe them away, but no matter how many times I cleaned the mirror, faint traces of the markings would reappear, like scars beneath the surface. A gnawing dread settled in my chest, a silent understanding that whatever was leaving those messages wasn't just trying to communicate, was claiming space, growing bolder with every stroke. I found small scratches on my bedroom walls, faint but deliberate, forming shapes that grew clearer each day. It felt like something was trying to communicate with me, or mark me. One evening, I invited my friend Liam over, desperate to feel less alone. We laughed, trying to shake off the tension, but then Liam went pale. "Dude, who's that in your room?" he whispered. I froze. "What are you talking about?" "In the mirror. There's someone standing behind you." I turned slowly. No one was there, but when I looked back at the mirror, I saw Ida, dark figure, featureless, standing right behind me. I spun around again. Nothing. Liam refused to stay. I couldn't blame him. Determined to end it, I decided to get rid of the mirror. My hands trembled as I gripped a screwdriver, sweat dripping down my temple despite the cold air swirling around me. I attacked the bolts with desperate force, but they wouldn't budge as if the rust had fused them into the very bones of the wall. Frustration boiled over into panic, and I grabbed a hammer, swinging with all my strength. Each strike echoed through the apartment like a distorted heartbeat, but the glass didn't crack. Instead, the mirror seemed to absorb the force, mocking my efforts with its unyielding surface. My wrist throbbed from the vibrations, tears of rage and fear stinging my eyes. It felt like the mirror wasn't just resisting me, it was holding me, anchoring itself to the room, feeding off my growing despair. I screamed, striking again and again until I collapsed to the floor, gasping, staring at my own distorted reflection, except it wasn't entirely mine anymore. The bolts were rusted, fused with the wood as if they'd been there for centuries. I even tried to smash it with a hammer, but the glass wouldn't crack. Instead, the hammer bounced back slightly, leaving me with a throbbing wrist and a growing sense of dread. That night was the worst. I woke up to find the sheet torn off the mirror. My reflection was gone. Instead, the dark figure stood inside, mimicking my every move with a slight delay, as if mocking me. Its empty eyes locked onto mine, and I felt something cold grip my chest, like invisible fingers pressing down on my heart. I don't remember much after that. Just flashes screaming, the sound of glass shattering darkness. But in those fleeting moments, I swear, I saw the figure stepping out of the mirror, its shadow stretching unnaturally across the room, whispering my name in a voice that wasn't mine. I woke up in a hospital, disoriented and drenched in sweat, with faint bruises like fingerprints pressed into the skin around my chest and neck. My neighbor had heard the noise and called for help after they reported hearing bone-chilling screams and frantic banging, followed by an eerie silence that seemed to stretch for hours. When the paramedics found me, I was lying in the middle of my apartment floor, surrounded by shards of broken glass from the mirror. My hands bloodied with deep cuts, as if I'd been clawing at something or trying to hold something back. My fingernails were cracked and stained with traces of dark residue the doctors couldn't identify, and the walls were covered in symbols carved so deep it was as if I'd etched them with more than just human strength. The mirror pieces reflected not just my face, but faint, distorted shadows that didn't seem to match anyone in the room. No one could explain it. They found me unconscious, the mirror shattered into pieces, and strange symbols etched into the walls around it. No one could explain it. The doctors said I had a breakdown, but they couldn't explain the frost-like handprints on my chest or why my fingerprints were found inside the mirror shards. I moved out as soon as I recovered, but sometimes when I pass by a reflective surface, I swear I see that shadow still watching me, waiting. And at night, just before I fall asleep, I sometimes hear faint tapping coming from nowhere, or maybe from somewhere just beyond the glass. But last night, it was different. The tapping grew louder, sharper, like fingernails dragging across a surface. When I glanced at the darkened window, I saw it just for a second, a faint outline, not a reflection, but a shadow on the wrong side of the glass, its hand pressed flat against it. And as I blinked, the shadow smiled.